welcome to sunny Florida, and it's actually my birthday today, and as the best gift that I could give and I could receive is actually interviewing 3 amazing women leaders about their moments after their own hurricanes. So come join me in the condo on the couch to hear their incredible stories of how they got through their hurricanes and storms, their recovery, and why they follow Jesus today. Come in. Well, this is great, and this is a special web exclusive for See Hear Love in Florida and after the hurricane. We're 2 weeks after Hurricane Irma devastated so much of the Gulf Coast of Florida, as many of you know on the news, and this is actually the Atlantic coast side, which there was some, residual and effects of the hurricane. And so what better time to celebrate my birthday and this amazing lady's birthday as well, but to come to Florida for the weekend and do a special web exclusive for you, our viewers, and to the amazing women around the world, and to encourage you on this weekend. So what we thought was timely and perfect as a title and as a topic to talk about is after the hurricane, because as you can see, and I'll introduce you, and actually they're going to introduce themselves to you about who they are and what they do, but incredible women leaders who you may see on platform, see on TV, see on YouTube, and think, man, they have no problems, they have it all together. But every single one of us has been through our own hurricane and storm, and we have had to work through it, and then in the recovery work through it. And we thought, what a perfect topic to encourage you through this time. So let's start over here, Dr. Mary Lynn. And I know it's kind of weird to put you guys on the spot about introducing yourself, but why don't you kind of share to our viewers around the world who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit of your passion as well.
Ooh, my passion. Well, I am a psychologist by training, although currently working as a supervising psychologist but pastor, working with this wonderful lady over here. Mm-hmm. And my passion would be, especially women. I have such a heart for women, such a heart for calling out in them who God has created them to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I would say that's probably me in a nutshell.
That's very true.
Okay.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Great.
I'm calling you.
All right, Lori,
Okay.
who are you?
I'm Lori Hartshorn, and what I do, I'm the pastor of adult ministries at C4 Church right now. Hasn't been the thing I've always done, but it's the season I'm in now. And yeah, I'm partnering up with this one here and a great team there, so I really enjoy that. I would say my passion, I'm an equipper by nature. I love to equip. Absolutely. I love to help other people, right? And I just love to have other people do better. So any way that I can help you do better, that gets me really excited.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, and the other birthday girl here beside me, Angie.
Yay.
Angie, besides being a wonderful birthday partner here on this weekend, who are you and what's your passion?
Well, I'm Angie Droskwick, and I'm the CEO at Young Street Mission, and so I get the privilege of serving there and leading an incredible team to serve alongside the poor and vulnerable in the city of Toronto, and that really is my passion.
Yeah,
my passion
it
is to actually go alongside the broken in heart and spirit and help them understand their great value and help them to move forward in their lives and out of poverty.
Amazing. You know, ladies, when I say the storm or the hurricane, what comes to mind? I mean, obviously, literally, this part of the United States went through that. But personally, when we think about women and ourselves, when I say that, what conjures up in your mind when I say that? Hurricane and storm. What kinds of things would that mean for people?
I mean, we can think of circumstances, right?
Yeah.
We can think of family, work, relational challenges, right? We can put in the storm category.
Yeah.
I think of emotional storms. I think about when Jesus, the passage in Mark where he's snoozing in the boat and the disciples are going, what the heck? There's a storm going around. And they're freaking out. So I think about our battles as women with fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think about, even the storm as an analogy for the kinds of things that can be external crises in our life that are of no making of our own, but are external actions that actually create those storms.
Yeah. As women, what paralyzes us in the midst of these kinds of storms? So you've mentioned some good ones, external. You've talked about ones that are about family and other crisis. But when that happens, we tend to be paralyzed. And why do you think that is? When it happens, it's either like we sort of like close down, shut down, and go, I don't want to deal with it, or we can go the opposite way. Why do you think that?
Well, I think when life is going well and we can feel like we're in control, then everything seems to go tickety-boo. But when storms happen and we feel like we're out of control, that's when we feel most vulnerable. Because we can't orchestrate things, we can't present a certain front to people because we're so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Sometimes storms happen to us, like you say, the external things,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's an internal storm of identity where you've even made a choice to step out into a new thing or whatever, and then you're faced with this stuff that was inside of you that you didn't even know was there,
all
right?
these
And you're like all the
insecurities.
insecurity
Yes.
and the fears and the need for affirmation from other people, that this storm came up from within you, and you're like, wow, what do I do with this now? You know?
No, good point.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, those storms can be things, if they are external and they weren't of your own making, that especially in the field that I work in, are traumatic events.
Yes.
And they're perpetrated on you, at which point it can influence a different kind of identity crisis and storm, where you actually it diminishes your own sense of value and worth,
Yeah.
which has
that's
a
huge.
different kind of impact on
Yeah.
how you then respond to that and respond to others and live out your life.
Don't you think too that storm, the nature of a storm, you feel powerless?
Yes, that's huge.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
whether-
overwhelming.
Whether it happened to you or
or-
like the source of it, you just feel powerless.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good sort of segue, Lori, as we talk, and I want to start with Dr. Mary, because I want to kind of get a little bit more personal on some of the own, like, hurricanes and storms that we faced personally, and then what helped us, who helped us, and how did we then get sort of through it into that recovery, just so that, our viewers who I know who have written us and talked to us said that's one of the biggest things that we face, Christian or not.
Yeah.
How do we get through our own storm and hurricane? So let's start with you, Dr. Mary.
Well, the last year of my life has been pretty difficult, and we've talked about this before. I lost my mother. My father was diagnosed with cancer, and so was my husband. So all of these storms that happened outside of me that I had no control over, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about trusting the Lord. And speaking of my mother, she was, and I speak was because I lost her, she was such a woman of God, such a woman of faith, such a prayer warrior. But what I observed that was difficult was that in her last days, where she had no control over her life, no control over how she appeared or presented to others, it wasn't really pretty. And as I reflected on it, what really struck me was my mom had not resolved her issues around her trauma. She had lost some close family members. She herself had faced death as a youngster. She hadn't resolved that. She hadn't also dealt with her tremendous fear of dying. So think about that. Trauma, fear, unresolved. And then you're faced in a situation where you have absolutely no control. What happens? So I saw parts of her that I never knew existed. And so it made me reflect, what legacy, what do I want people to remember me by? I don't want to remember because I hadn't faced with my issues, my acting out of my ugliness instead of my beauty, my acting out of my faith. That's what I want people to see. So that's something that really struck me, is like, I've preached this before, deal with your junk, but like, deal with your junk. Like, that has led me on a journey of such self-reflection and healing as a result, because I don't want to end up at that point where I feel out of control and then I'm presenting to the world a person who's not Jesus's daughter. Right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying to me as I'm hearing you is that deal with this stuff. Don't wait till the very end and say, I'm literally on my deathbed. Now deal with it or not deal with it. But you're saying,
don't pretend you have it all together.
okay, so deal with it as it comes. That's tough though,
know.
Mary. Like, who wants to deal with your junk now?
I know.
The benefits are though.
You don't deal with your junk, it just accumulates, it gets worse, it gets ingrained in your character, it gets ingrained in your emotions, it gets ingrained in your relationships, and it becomes bigger. So if you face it when you can, then there's freedom at the other side.
So interesting, and like you're saying, at her death, when she lost control, right? Physically, emotionally, just being able to be present, that it really surfaced then.
Yeah.
And that whole issue of control
Exactly.
is a thing that we can just keep that hurricane back, but
Exactly.
maybe brew it inside.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. And we can't fake it anymore.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's good.
wow.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that's
That's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
Lori, hurricanes
Yeah.
that you have experienced and then gotten through.
Yeah, I would say this hurricane, it's an identity issue for me that I actually didn't know was inside me until I actually made a choice. I was an educator, teacher, trainer for over 20 years, and that was very much part of my identity. So, but I felt God call me out of it. I felt God saying, there's something more I want from you. And he didn't tell me what it was. And it was a journey of faith. And I literally needed to walk away from what I knew and who people knew me to be.
Yes.
Like, who is Lori if she's not a teacher or an educator or trainer, right? Like, so I had made the choice. I'd gone through this journey of faith that I'm going to leave education, this world that I know in its formality.
Yeah.
And I'm going to step into this faith journey of obeying God, but actually didn't know what it would look like. And I was in the last week of teaching at a school that I had served at for 13 years and really bled out for. Can I just say that? Sometimes I bleed out for the organization, you know, and loved what I did. So I didn't leave. It was my choosing, on my own choosing that I left, so I couldn't blame anybody else for that. And here I was, this organization, as great as it was, did not do a good job at affirming and recognizing people and saying, like, thank you. Ironically, one of the roles I played there was doing that for other people. So when I left, there's no one to do it for me.
Yeah.
It was like something out of a comic book. Like, you could just, this scene of bumbling over, oh my goodness, like Lori's leaving and there were two others that were leaving. And anyway, it was a bit of a disaster. No one got really recognized or thanked. And I'm standing there and the whole building had cleared. And I was looking over my then music room. I'd been a music teacher, reflecting on all the years and realizing that was the last day I was going to be there. And I was just crying. I was just crying over, like, what am I doing? I'm walking away from this, and who will I be next? And feeling a little hurt. Not a little hurt.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot hurt.
I had conversations with Lori at
A
that
lot
time.
hurt. I didn't realize it was in me.
Yeah.
And what was that about that I was hurt? And I realized through some work, through my junk, and recognizing what was that hurt. It was just that needing to be valued and affirmed. And, you know, the Lord was really gracious to me. I mean, I can say there's a few times in my life I've really heard crystal clear from God. Like, almost an audible voice. Very rarely is that the case. But I have to say, in this case, as I was in this broken state of not even truly understanding what was happening to me, but I'm this storm of identity and this whisper of God that came to me in that moment, literally what he said was, I saw it all.
Oh, that's good. I saw it all.
I saw it all. And you know, there was something about that moment, and then knowing it was from God, it was so perfect. There was nobody else around but the janitor sweeping the floors. The rooms were darkened, the hallways were empty. It was me facing this loss. And hearing that whisper of God, it changed the way I entered that next season, that even though I felt overlooked, and it was actually in some ways, and not affirmed, it was like God was saying, are you going to be okay to do what I ask you to do without the affirmation of man? Is my affirmation enough for you?
That's a big question.
I have come back to that moment, Tom. I'd like to say, and from then on, I never struggled.
Never happened again. I never worried about it.
You
Never
know,
yet.
it was a moment for me I go back to say, is God's affirmation enough for me? Will I obey him in spite of maybe the negative voices of men or no voices of men, and I mean in general, men and women? And I keep reminding myself of that when I feel overlooked, unappreciated, which I know we've all been there to
Oh,
some.
absolutely.
And to know, is God's affirmation enough for us?
That's a big one because I, personally, Lori, like, I struggle with that. And I was just saying to Angie, before this little shoot, would I do the work if I didn't get the kind of affirmation and feedback from people?
Right.
Could I do something quietly behind the scenes and still be okay if nobody said even, that was great?
Right.
And I actually had a moment where I was like, yikes, because, there is that part.
Yeah.
There is,
But it's
and
a
we
good
all
question,
struggle with-
yeah.
I think all of us struggle with deep insecurities, even though we may present and project as very confident. Yeah, definitely.
So the storm for you, the sort of the hurricane of, not being seen or valued, but what got you through is when sort of that God speaking, whispering, saying, but, I saw it all.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's a good reminder for
yeah.
all of us to say that even though man, woman, don't see it, your boss doesn't see it, your parents don't see it,
That's right.
God sees it.
Yeah.
That's a good
And is that
reminder.
enough for you?
Is that enough for you?
Wow, good question. Good question.
Yeah.
Lori, that's excellent. Angie, what about you? Your thoughts on the hurricane and then recovery?
Well, I think that, just kind of building on what these women have shared, and it's been a privilege to actually journey through life with them as well. My experience is more rooted in that brokenness of identity and crisis of identity that comes from trauma and a difficult life. So things that are kind of perpetrated against us that causes us to have poor self-opinion. Right, and causes us to not think highly of ourselves, which of course you don't want to think overly highly of yourself, but really where a person just thinks I'm not worth anything, and that's really the space that I work in, and it's also a part of my background and personal experience, and if somebody grows up like I did in a difficult situation, where things happen that cause you to actually think you don't have value as a person. That colors everything you do,
Sure.
right? That becomes how you
absolutely.
see yourself, and
It's your
how you see
filter.
yourself
Yeah.
becomes how you see others, and how you even interpret their actions toward you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, I think the personal experience, which I'll then talk about how that impacts what I'm focused on now, but was one of needing to come to a place of understanding that was even happening in me. Right? And then upon realizing that, having someone guide me through the process of healing.
Right.
So I think a big part, yes, there's God, and for me it was leaning into Jesus and leaning into a relationship with Him and letting Him heal me. But I needed someone to help me do that.
Yeah,
Right?
that's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so for me, it was a woman in Victoria who's a spiritual director who just came alongside me. And we, over the course of, I don't know, it's like almost 2 years, really kind of worked through the prayer and the realizations and the healing to get to a place where, even though on the surface of things, like you say, right? Like I was a highly functioning leader.
Right.
Nobody had a clue that any of this was happening in my
Right.
life, but it was a deep woundedness, like deal with your stuff, a deep
Yeah.
woundedness that was still influencing me, and in many ways,
Yeah.
to the storm, anchoring me, holding me back. Right, it was my anchor. My experience was my anchor, and after having moved through it, and this is the hope for everybody, it became my platform.
Yeah.
Because God
Wow.
uses those things. He doesn't promise life won't have storms.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Right.
He promises
much
us.
guaranteed.
Yeah, that's
He
guaranteed.
guarantees that there will be
Yeah.
storms,
Yeah.
but He promises to be with us in the storms.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And carry us through the storms. And so that's been my very real experience. And He has done that. And then He takes that, and then it becomes your platform for service. So as I serve now, where He's taken me,
Yeah.
it's serving people who've had experiences like me,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That makes sense now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it all
It
makes
totally
perfect
makes sense.
And don't we lead out of our experiences, both good, bad, and ugly, right?
Yeah.
And we lead out of our identity.
Yes.
So even though you're leading, functioning as a leader, you're also leading out of your identity, your woundedness, your strengths, your weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
Like that is gonna come out.
Yes.
We were
Yeah.
just
In the way
actually
that you
talking
lead.
about that earlier today.
Yeah.
Because I've been friends with Angie for many years and seen the growth and that journey and the healing, and just watching her as she's led and the lessons you've learned along the way and how that's infused the way you've led your
Yeah.
team,
Amazing.
which has
Yeah.
just become more and more amazing.
Yeah.
We're just gonna be affirming you the whole time.
Oh, yeah,
No,
for sure.
Well, I am a birthday girl.
Yeah, we are the birthday girls. One thing that I've noticed too, so we have deal with your junk, know that God has seen you, get somebody to help you, sort of through the recovery, and then know that the anchor then becomes sort of the platform in which you can serve. It sounds though what I think is key is there are choices that we had to make.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want just us to land on that for just a little bit, because I want to encourage and empower our viewers and listeners that we do, that we do not remain victims of circumstances or situations, but that for every single one of us,
Yeah.
we have had to make choices to be where we are today. Because a lot of people look at us and like, look at them, but they don't know all the backstory and all the other things that we had to do and the hard work that it took for us to get where we're at. So I just want us to talk a little bit about choices and the importance of it and how we make those choices. Because it's either we make this choice or we make this choice, right? It's
Well,
always
you said
that.
at the beginning, you can get paralyzed.
Right.
That's a choice, right? In some ways, it's like you're choosing to be paralyzed by this circumstance, situation, or the things within you. Or you can, I have the phrase, do it afraid. You can actually move through the paralysis, but you have to do something to move forward.
Right.
Right? And it may need the help of others.
Yeah.
May need some inner healing. Right? You may need to actually call things out honestly.
Well, and I think one of the hardest things is choosing your mental framework and choosing not to have a victim framework.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I get that.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is so easy to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
no
many-
one sees me, no one cares.
Well, and many times-
Things do happen to you, and people are harsh or they hurt
That's
you.
right.
Yeah.
And it's justifiable. There's some
It
things you're
is.
like, oh, I have every right to be this way.
Yeah.
And it's not fair.
Right. Yes.
But you can't choose other people's actions. You can only choose your response to them. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would
What about
add.
control again?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
sorry.
Well,
Control,
the other thing
yeah.
I was going to add too, if you think about what happened to the disciples, they weren't looking at Jesus when the storm was coming up. They were looking at the storm. They were looking at the waves. They were looking at the crashing around, and they became afraid as a result.
Yeah.
Whereas, so my choice to keep my eyes on Jesus, who's snoozing. So if my
Apparently it's
God,
not bothering you.
apparently it's not
Yeah,
bothering him. If he's able to sleep and rest because
Yeah.
he knows he is the God of storms,
Yeah.
then can I not trust him
Yeah.
to oversee my storms as opposed to continuously looking at my storms and thinking, oh shoot, I have to try to control it or I have to become a victim of my storms.
How do I ride the waves?
How do I ride the
Oh,
wave?
that's even
Ooh,
good.
that's good.
I'm seeing all the analogies.
Yeah.
Seeing all the analogies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So choice is key. And yes, there are situations where, we do need professional help. We do need to get, some support and help that way, spiritual director or counselor. We do need, I think, key is especially for us, being in a church community or community that is safe, that can kind of speak in truth and things, right?
It's all
And
friends.
like you were saying
yeah,
too, this
right.
one, like when spiritual director, right, in community, working through your stuff with the psychologist or whatever, the counselor, but to your
My
point,
poor friends.
all of those people are saying, look to Jesus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really, is there any ultimate hope in the healer and the God
That's right.
himself
I
who
know.
knows you so deeply, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what your spiritual director did for you.
Yeah.
Completely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is our true hope.
And for those that don't know him, so because our viewership is broad, and a lot of people are on a very diverse and different spiritual journey. Some are right at the very beginning, some are not even in there. Have just tuned in and went, "What is this?" For us as women, why Jesus? And I want to end this web exclusive. Why Jesus for you?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think I've come to the point in my life where I've recognized that I do not have control. I really have released that. I don't know how I can handle life knowing that no one is in control. And so for me, knowing that Jesus is King, He is Lord of the storms, He is the one who spoke this world into existence. And yet, with all that power, He notices us.
Yeah.
He knows every single thing about me, every single worry, every thought that flits through my head, and He loves me. He's chosen me from the beginning of time. For me, it's that power versus huge love and grace and compassion for us, and knowing every single thing we're going through coming together. That to me has been the anchor for my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful, powerful.
Yeah. You stole my line, but I want to say I totally
And I stole
affirm that.
hers too with the
No,
other,
that
but
was
I
really
switched it.
good.
Yeah.
And I would say we have a redemptive God. I mean, if you don't know Jesus, really the story of Jesus is this redemption of God, a God that loves us so much. He comes toward us. He seeks us out. He knows everything about us, right? He adores us. And therefore, He is in loving control.
Yeah.
That he actually, everything about your life matters to him.
Yeah.
And he just wants you to come back to him, to be right, to be reconciled, to be his child. That is the ultimate story of Jesus. And in every aspect of your life, he's constantly saying, come to me, just come to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wants to be with you. He
Yes.
wants you and loves you.
Yeah, and I think so many people who struggle with whether or not they want to put their trust in Jesus, you know, that in itself is a control struggle.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
That in itself
Yeah.
is a control, and it's a fair struggle, and it's good to reason that through and make your own decision. People have to make their own decision. And all I can say for myself personally, in terms of personal experience, because I've had that struggle too, and many of us have had that, is that everything you two have said, and the truth is, his nature is a restorative nature.
Yeah.
He's not a retributive justice, mean-spirited person,
Right.
standing in the sky, going to strike you with
Shaming you.
lightning bolts every time you do something wrong. He actually died on the cross
For you.
to take the penalty of our sins, and all he wants is a loving relationship with us.
Yeah.
That's all he really wants. So my reason is Jesus loves me.
This I know.
I know. I was about to go into the
This
song.
loving God.
Yeah.
Like that we're all saying, you know, our control issues, but the trust that comes, right? It's just this, I trust you because he loves us. So good.
Yeah.
And really, that's what we all want.
Yeah.
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 That's right. Don't we want that for our own kids?
We want that for
Our kids, yeah, and for
Right?
our neighbors, and
Same.
for our community, and for
Absolutely.
our nation,
Yeah.
and for the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Ladies,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I think it's so important for women to hear from other women about, you know, their own personal story. And I think it's also really important sometimes for us to articulate it ourselves of why Jesus. Because we sometimes sort of take it and that's just who we are and what we do, but to really hear why Jesus. And I think the same for what you're saying to me that resonates is that Jesus loves me. You know, from an, you know, and I say this again, but I can't get enough of it, from an orphan baby, that the God of the universe would remember and see.
And saw you.
And here I am.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no other way that I can, you know, explain it more than that.
Yeah.
And just the restorative nature of his work in my own life, in my birth mother's life, and in the ministry. So privileged to spend my birthday with these amazing women, to celebrate another year. But isn't that the beautiful thing of being with girlfriends and community who love Jesus, to walk on this journey together, to support one another? What a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of this web exclusive. And to you viewers, I hope that you take this. If you have questions, please get to us on Say Hello on our website at seehearlove.com. And we'll have information about all of these women, the work that they do. So if you can check it out and see the incredible impact that they're having in the nation of Canada, in their neighborhoods, and all over the world. So thanks for joining us. And from all of us here in Florida, in sunny Florida, we say goodbye and we'll see you again.
And happy birthday.
Oh, yay!